had a lot of folks ask me about this mill. How I hooked up the hydraulics and all of that good warm fuzzy stuff. You know, how many hours I got on it, so on and so forth. There's right at 14,500 hours on this mill. If it's burned down today, it don't owe me a nickel. If you look at these side supports, I don't know if they're stainless steel all the way through or what, but there's almost an inch wide worn just flat from going up and down the side logs and timbers. And how many times it's been up and down the timber, God only knows. You can see the chain turner's been through a lot. Obviously you can't use the side supports to keep your timber square anymore. You got to kind of Kentucky windy that. If you feel this top rail, it's over a ½ inch flat across the top. But the irony is, if you feel this side, it's just as flat from where those cam follower bearings and rollers and everything are rubbing up against it. The hydraulics, the mill hydraulics, the hydraulic pump is getting plumbed into the valve bank on the mill. Then what would normally be the return line from that valve bank is plumbed into the intake line of the valve bank for the extension. And it is mounted right here on my roller table. So I turn my hand one way to operate the mill, turn my hand 180 degrees to operate the extension. Now I only had them add the claw turner on the extension part because number one, I didn't want to have all the extra valve and everything, the extra aggravation. And the claw actually works better on that end, in my opinion, than I think a chain turner would do. Because all I needed to do is just assist this end a little bit now and then, and most of the time the chain would be in the way. I did add another 12-foot extension to it, so where we can go up 56 foot long. The biggest part that bothers me about this mill is you look at the wear on it, the hours, and you think about the fact I had to walk beside this son of a bitch every step to do it. Ain't no wonder I'm tired. You can see everything I was doing was with oversized logs, so you can see where I added extra metal. I did that when the mill was brand new. I went up to Indianapolis, I bought the mill. The LT40 I had before this, all of this was beat. There was a trench beat into the square tubing to where you couldn't square up your mill no more. You couldn't square up this rail or that rail, just because, well, I mean, you put the big oversized logs, you put the butt end this way, you can see what the butt ends have done to that table. I've straightened it a couple times. I was like, what's the point? Big logs would knock it off, so there is now a 6-inch bolt going all the way through it, holding it to the frame. It's like, knock it off now, you son of a... The other thing I did is I added extra metal underneath here, because with this lightweight square tubing and oversized logs, it would beat this bolt. There was a nut welded on the bottom that you threaded into, and it would beat that into the square tubing. I also added extra metal underneath this steel plate here, and on that bed rail there. If you notice your travel pin, it don't come up all the way anymore because extra metal underneath it. Well, it ain't going to travel very much anyhow.
You ain't got no wheels on it, so it
right. Well, that's another story where it tried to kill me. But the sawdust from hardwoods is very acidic. It has a tendency to eat metal up. Well, this mill sat in the same place for 16 years. Of course, the tires was dry rotted. Well, my preference was to put it on the gooseneck trailer and just bring it home. Well, all I had was the front end loader down there, and I couldn't. When I brought the front end loader over the top of the mast, I couldn't raise it high enough to clear the dead-gum gooseneck trailer. I was like, well, we know the tires are dry rotted, we'll buy new tires. Brand new tire made it 35 miles, not quite 53. So when the tire blew on this side, it ripped the tabs that was welded. You know, they was welded on there properly, but after 15 years of rust, 16 years of rust, they ain't got much meat holding no more. So the axle that was supposed to be mounted here ripped back. The right side come back to this jack, the left side come back to this cylinder. You know, it already sets kind of a cattywampus angle to keep this tracking straight, but if you put it at like that kind of an angle, it goes into the ditch. And it was a very steep ditch. Well, you got all your weight on this side, the tire's flat on this side. It sheared the bolt on the bottom of the leaf springs, which let it set down another 4 inches. And yeah, we was in the come to Jesus moment. And irony of ironies, I blew the tire at 3 o'clock. At 4:05, I was in the yard with the sawmill, the whole 9 yards. Just so happened I had a record going to get that little portable building right there. I called him. I said, abort that mission, come get me. And a buddy drove by with his, he runs a mechanic business, has a service truck with a crane on it. And he happened to drive by. He says, are you okay? I said, nope. He says, need some help? Yeah, yep. And he come and helped me. He was able to lift. We'd put the rollback underneath the back of the frame, but every time we tried to lift it up to where we could pull the axle back in line, with all the weight this way, it was in the ditch this way, it was just about cartwheel. And so my buddy drove his truck off of the ditch at about 60 miles an hour. He launched that thing, and when it sunk to the axle, you wouldn't have parked that truck no different than if you had pulled up beside me at a Walmart parking lot, Captain. And he hooked onto the top of the mast, supported it. We raised this up, got the axle where it needed to be, winched it onto the rollback. The guy pulled forward, was strapping down the sawmill. My buddy with the service truck, I saw how he drove in there. Well, he hooked up chains and everything. We dropped it. When I unhooked from the ball of the trailer, from the ball of the truck, this went on that truck. We dropped the chain on that. And I knew how he was going to drive coming out because I seen him drive in it. So it was like, I went like that on that right-hand pedal. We shot him up. He was out, turned around. The rollback went that way. We turned in right behind him. And you wouldn't have planned it better if you'd written into the script. But
you wouldn't have believed it at the beginning you was going to be out of there.
I was like, but yeah, apparently the good Lord does look after fools. So. Anyway, I just thought y'all would like to know some of the history of this poor sawmill, because she's been through a lot.
How'd you bring the other half home? Did you bring that home?
Yeah, that was all on the gooseneck. Yeah, that wasn't no problem because I could get forks underneath it. But you come in here with forks, you got all these cylinders and everything in your linkage, and you're just going to tear something up. I thought about picking up this end with a backhoe and that end with the front end loader and then back, and I was like, I ain't getting up in the truck and backing underneath when I've got it up 15 foot high to clear the ramps on the trailer and everything else. I ain't doing all that. So I was brave, not brave enough. Let's whack it and stack it. This ought to take about 15 minutes.
People are still between the building and
Sir?
Where are you cutting this into?
This is a pre-bought timber to get the max size I can. Yep. A little bit of Wayne is okay, but it'll either be a 10 by 12 or 12 by 12 or 12 by 14 or whatever it ends up being. This particular customer buys them, resaws them into different size timbers for his customers as they order them, and you know, whatever it makes, that's what it makes.
14 by 14, maybe at least.
Right. Maybe at least 12 by 14 if nothing else.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
We'll find out in a minute. But one of the things I like about Cypress is it's pretty forgiving. It's got very little shrinkage. That's one of the reasons it's used a lot in timber frame homes and stuff, because you can stick it up there green and you ain't got to worry about it shrinking so much.
This wasn't a butt log either, was it?
No, we done took the butt log off. Now this one's a little over 26 foot long. Most of the time, if you was sawing a 26 foot on any kind of a normal mill, you would have it up as far as you could towards the tongue end of the mill. But when you got 56 foot, it kind of looks kind of puny on here. My main objective is try to get it to both turners and clamps. Worst case scenario, at least get it on that far toe board roller if it won't reach the log turner. But by having it on both turners and clamps, that gives me a lot more control over the log.
It reminds me when Mr. Tom got the new baker and the Tom sawed 20 footers and the log turner was like
too far forward.
Too far forward.
So why you got the bigger end on that end?
Right.
I don't know. We kind of like sawing from the small end. That way we can see it better, and you know.
Right, but I take grade lumber off the outside edge all the way around. So I don't want to go all the way up there to be able to cut off my grade lumber off the outside edges and then have to bring it back all the way over here. So I can saw it over here, but also by having the weight on the chain turner, a lot of times I could turn this log and never use that end of the turner. It's I'm lazy like that. But anyway, let's whack it and stack it.
There's a claw down there, I believe. I think that's a claw. I think it's a 40 bed on that one.
here's one of the, we're going for a 12 by 14. I've got one more board to take off of either this face or the bottom face. But in judging by the pith and the wane and everything else, by wane standards, I'd be better off to take another board off the other face and clean up better. But because of the way this pith is wandering, it's higher, then lower, then higher. You'll end up with a straighter timber if I take another board off of this one. Because if I come down from the other face, then this pith will be getting pretty close.
Yeah, then you'll have too much here and then not enough down there. Yeah.
When you start doing the long timbers, you pay less attention to the pith on the end of the logs and more how that cathedral grain is running through the timber to get your straightest timbers. Or I do. But this one's one of those that's really ain't really a wrong way you could really take it off of either side. So we're probably going to turn it 180, take it off the other side. It'll clean up the timber better because he's probably going to cut it to a 16 and a 10. That kind of a deal. But I'm looking at the cathedral grain on this face, and that's what it's doing, is making a dip right here. I'm having a hard time seeing it from over there because I'm tall enough. Where's Robert?
It's thinner in the middle right there, and it kind of dives down here.
Right. You got about, looks like about the same amount here
As you do there.
there on this side. Right. Awesome cathedral. If you watch videos of me sawing, you'll see me step around the head of that mill, and that's what I'm doing, is I'm looking at that cathedral grain all the time, trying to see what's going on with it. Yeah, we fix it flip 180. Anyway, that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Only thing I don't like about Cypress is that out. Cut those little fingers out to keep your blade from going places. It clogs up dust collector on my dust collector.
It definitely can do that.
Biggest thing I'm gonna have to fight them with is just
Some of that high-tech stuff.
Taking it off.
the previous owner before Brad had it at all.
Can't forget the side lumber. That's important.
Let me get
too.
out of the way.
Was that a pretty board there? I was lucky enough to get to saw a little bit of cypress with Mr. Tom down in Jacksonville several years ago, and we don't have cypress in Michigan, that's for sure.
No. I knew Mr. Tom
You knew Mr. Tom?
years ago.
You bet. I miss him. He was my right-hand man.
He's a good guy.
You bet. You know.
He sawed for Dr. Gowan.
Yes.
I've sawed a bunch of wood since then for Dr. Gowan.
I remember now. Slider.
Yep.
Yep.
The last time I went to Gowan's,
I was out there and I stood on them 20-inch wide boards. I've been in that camp. Yep.
You been in the camp?
Yep. Chasing lizards along the river.
Beautiful place.
You betcha.
He's a fine man.
Is
Dr.
he?
Gowan is, yes, fine man. My wife worked with him for years at the hospital and maternity.
You know, I had sawed it by the time I met Tom, millions and millions of board feet. But I went down and spent a weekend with Tom. That's the weekend I became a sawyer. Really. You know, up there, logs come in, lumber went out. I didn't care. My job was to make round things square.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave no thought to whether they were going to warp or twist or whatever down the road. I didn't care. Once they went on the truck and went out, I didn't. But most of it was blocking and stuff, and the grade behaves itself for the most part. But honestly, what Tom did was slow me down by 25%.
Yeah. And you ain't making production now. I mean, now you're not.
But then, you know, I was supposed to get so much per day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, loads had to go at a certain
all they
time.
cared about.
So that was fun watching that.